This is a project of the Unified Committee for Afro-American Contributions. Today's date is November 2nd, 2003. Today we are interviewing Theresa Young in her home. The interviewer is Bob Lewis. So, Miss Young, can you tell me your full name? Can you state your full name?
Nanny Theresa Young.
Okay, can you say it in a sentence? My name is...
My name is Nanny Theresa Young.
Okay, can you tell me where you were born and tell me about your people?
I was born in Leonardtown in June the 6th, 1921. I am the daughter of Jane Francis Swales, and my father was, I'm not, Frank. Yeah, Frank Swales. And I was born in Leonardtown. And I've lived in Leonardtown all my life. I've never lived anywhere else.
19 children.
Yeah, I am the youngest of 19 children. And my mother's, my mother, some of them died at birth, but, most of them lived. And I only had 3 sisters left in my family. And I know she might not want me to use her name, so. But one is Harriet and one is Elmore, and I'm Theresa. I'm the youngest of the 19. And I've been in Leonardtown all my life. I've never lived anywhere but Leonardtown. And when I was a child, I was born right in the town of Leonardtown. And that's where I lived about most of my life, right in Leonardtown, Maryland. And most of the people that I grew up with, most of them are deceased. But I can remember my grandmother telling me about her childhood. She was a slave of the Blackstone plantation, right where St. Mary's Academy is today. That was where she was born, and that was where she lived as a child until slavery was over. And when slavery was over, she was, just a young woman when slavery was over. And she had brothers, and her mother's name was Clarissy. And her mistress was from Charles County. She was a plater from Charles County. And her husband, she married one of the Blackstones. And that was her master, slave master. And she was a child during slavery and on the plantation. But, it was rough because she said her mother had to leave her in the morning to tend the cows. She had to carry the cows to the meadow, and when she left the meadow, then she went to the field to work. And she never came back until after she had finished in the field and after the cows were brought back from the meadow and milked. And she carried the milk to the house. But they had one lady to mind the children that were left in the slave quarters while their parents, did their work on the plantation. But she was grew up, seeming to be a child, and she was not a bitter woman after she got grown. She was a gentle, kind person, and she never bore no grudges or no, hard feelings. That was my grandmother. And she married, but she went to Philadelphia. She worked for Quakers, she said, up in Pittsburgh. And that's where my mother was born, up up in Pittsburgh, and she came back, and my mother was christened in Baltimore at one of the Catholic churches, and she came back home and she got married and lived in St. Mary's County, until she died. And my grandmother was 91 when she died. And but those are just some things that I remember, and some of it I don't remember. But she was a gentle woman, a very loving, kind woman. And she never felt no animosity to anybody. And she was a, well-liked person. And she did always, but she couldn't. My grandmother never learned to read or write, and she couldn't read or write. But she always wanted her children to go to school and to better themselves, to get as much education as as they could afford in that day. Because in them days, it was,
What did she sleep on, Mom?
huh?
What did she sleep on?
Oh, well, she slept in the slave quarters, and she said it was a one-room shack, and it had dirt floors, and they had to gather straw or out of, a straw or leaves out of the woods and stuff it in bags. That's what they slept on at night. I mean, we all know how terrible slavery was, and we all know that nobody. And she said, like knives and forks, there weren't any. You use your fingers, or sometimes she said you'd get oyster shells, and you'd scrub them real clean and white, and that's what you use. It was no, and we all know that. I mean, we can see in movies where things are enhanced, but it wasn't enhanced for her, because that's the way it was in that day. And we all know, and we've all had stories about slavery, and we know it wasn't glorious or glamorous at all. We all know that. But I feel in my heart that that was the way it was. But being a God-fearing person, I have learned you don't hold animosity. We are all, I say created in God's image, and no animosity is to be held. That's what you went through, and God brought you through that. And to me, and even to my grandmother, because like I told you, she was a very kind, gentle lady, and there was no animosity. And she did want the best for her children, and they all, went to school. And we, at that time, one-room schools, and you probably went as far as the 5th or 6th grade, and then you went on to work or do whatever work you could do. But my mother said she married at a young age because she wanted her own home, and then she wanted things for herself. But she had sisters that went to the city and, got good jobs and did labor and work. But, and then she had a brother that fought in World War I, and my grandmother had brothers that fought in this war between the states. She had 2 brothers. And when the war was over, they never came back. They went on to Ohio, and she never saw them brothers again. She don't know, whatever happened to them. But, that's about, when, in my young days. And my life was spent in Leonardtown, right in the heart of Leonardtown. And to me, and to this day, I know about segregation. I know all about things that, you went in the back door, I know all about that. But I don't hold that. I look forward to what's better and to better myself, to better things, make better things for other people. I don't hold. I guess I'm like my grandmother and my mother, because you don't hold things. You just start out to see if you can help to make it better for those that are coming behind you. But you do impress upon young people that you need to be educated, you need to work hard, you need to, try to help to make it better for yourself and better for whoever's coming, behind you. And that's the way my life is, have always been. And you do your best, whatever it is. And my mother always taught all of us to always do your best. And it's some things that you know you can't do, then those are the things you stay away from. You have to learn to find and to do what's best for you, not what suits somebody else. What's going to benefit me, or what can I contribute to help others? But never holding to negative and never looking back on, what used to be. Always look forward to see, well, what can I do to make it better, or to improve or whatever. That, been the way I felt. And all, of this county. And today, when I look around now, even white or black that I was raised with, it's very few. It's not many more original that I grew up with, white or black. And I've had, and as growing up, we know we were separated, but we always looked out. If you had white people that encouraged and wanted and helped you in whatever way they could to make things better for all of us. Because somehow or another we seemed like we were a community, and it's different people in this community, but to make us a better community, we will try to make it better for each one in that community. That's the way that I was raised, and that's the way I see St. Mary's County or Leonardtown all through my life. And I've been there from the day I was born up until now. And it's always, to me, been that way. Sure, you had people that maybe didn't like you or maybe called you out of your name, but my mother always let me know that I am somebody, and just because you call me that name, I don't have to be that name. I can always rise above that. I can be a better person. I can let you know by my actions that I am somebody and that I can be a better person. And I try to instill in my grandchildren today, you can be better, because you don't have to be what people call you or what people think you are. You take pride in who you are and living and being a better person, because you can be. And that's the way I look at my life. And I love Leonardtown. I love St. Mary's County. That's all I've ever known. I had been to other places, but hey, this is home, and I love home. And I love all the people in this home. We are all one people. And just by living, I guess, to get 82, I have learned to, that, it really, some things are really not that important. I mean, I'm here, I have good health, I have a place to stay, and I'm willing to contribute to programs, to whatever I can do to help. If I can make it better for somebody coming, I've always wanted to do that. That's partially the way I was raised. My mother was always the one to uplift, to give, to make it better. And I think even from my grandmother as a child in her day, it was always to uplift and to make it better. But
Do you remember your grandfather? Can you tell me about him?
my grandmother never knew her father, because they were moved from different plantations. And she never mentioned a father. She never had a father figure in her life. All she remembered was her mother and the lady that watched his children in the slave quarters. She never remembered her father. And she might have known who he was. And then you know one thing, in that day is some things old people wouldn't tell you. They didn't discuss it with you. Only certain things they wanted you to know. And to me it was things that were encouraging or uplifting. Some things they didn't want you to know, or I guess I won't say it wasn't important, but they just never let you know about the certain things. And they would let you know a child is supposed to be in a child's place. And certain things they did not discuss with you. And she never mentioned her father, but only her mother. And she never said anything about who her father was. But although she had brothers, 2 brothers, but she never said, anything about her father figure.
Tell me about your mother. Tell me, what kind of woman was she? What was her day like?
My mother she was born in Pittsburgh, and her father was Mac Williams. She was Jane Frances Mac Williams. And I don't know who Mac Williams was. I really don't. But that was her name. And she was a hard-working lady. She believed in helping her neighbors. She believed in achieving. Always do your best. Always carry yourself as because you are important. Don't care where you come from. You are human and you are important. And carry yourself that way.
She took strangers
Yes, she was a kind person, and she
in.
always,
Hotel.
she ran a hotel for, it was a black hotel right in the heart of Leonardtown, right behind what you call Bell Motor Company. It was a little hotel, and when these people come from the city, when this merchants used to have men come and, give out the orders, and one would stay in the white hotel, some in the black hotel. It was always people coming and going, but, but she was, very kind, very gentle.
So,
Oh, yes. Well, she always made all of our clothes. Yes, and she could sew, and she could play the piano a little bit, but she was always active in organizations and in, voting, because she knew that was important, that you, as a citizen, to register and vote, because that's a privilege that you have. And she figured that was one that you earned. Those are privileges, and since you earn them, then you participate in them, and you do your best, and you always give back to organizations, to your community, to friends, and they had little organizations, and I didn't realize that some of the organizations started in the South because they were called societies, beneficial societies, and they had one in Leonardtown, and it was called St. Aloysius Beneficial Society, and you gave a little stipend, and at your death, that society would bury you. And those members of that society, if the man of the house was sick, then the men in that society would come and do the work and help that family until that man got well enough to come back and do his own. Or if the woman got sick, then the women would go and help the woman, see that the children were fed and clothed, do the woman's work until the woman could get up on her feet. And that's why they were called beneficial societies. They were there for the community, to help one another. And we had several of them in St. Mary's, but I think St. Jerome's is still active. But other than that, the rest of them are not active. But that one is still active. And
Okay, tell me more about this hotel your mother ran. Did she own it? Just tell me more about it.
It was, she rented it, but she did it, but when she come back, she moved to Washington, but she didn't stay. She come back and opened that hotel. And people, when, like I said, traveling salesmen, they would spend the night. Sometimes some of the school teachers would rent rooms, while they were here teaching. And people would, come back and forth, like that. And she always, rented that hotel. And she was a very hard-working lady. And, she would, cook the meals. And that was after, we had gotten fairly grown when she had, when she ran that hotel. But people always came, and we always had our place. You could not, when at the dining room table or when people were playing or visiting, we couldn't come in and run and suit ourselves. We had to go to the back and, be respectful and do all those kind of things. Huh? Oh yeah. When I was going to school, we had a run-room school. It was, we had this St. Aloysius Beneficial Hall. And when I went first, second, and third grade, it was on the back of that hall. And I had a one teacher. And when you got to the fourth grade, then they had a one-room school down the hill, right across from St. Aloysius Cemetery that's down there now. It was a one-room school, and that carried you from the fourth grade to the sixth or seventh grade. And then when you come out of that, that was all, because it was no high school here for black children in that day. If you wanted to go higher, you had to go to the city, or you had to, some parents send their children to Charles County, and you had to board them in order for them to go in high school, because we had no high school
What
there.
job you?
Huh?
What job you?
What?
Job you? That would be-
No, but no, that came out later, honey, because when the that organization, black organization, the men mortgaged their homes and they bought
That's downtown.
they bought the land. It was what do you call it? A school where taught children trade. And because I had older brothers that learned how to cane chairs, but when that school closed down, the organization was they come together. We had Mr. Bunton Thompson, Mr. Herbert Blackson, Mr. John Shelton, and a man from 7th District. There's several black people over Hollywood. They all come together and form the organization, and they mortgaged their home to buy that land up there where Banneker is. And those men cut lumber off of that land and carried the lumber to the mill, and they built the first Banneker, a two-room school. One on that side, one on this side, and a hall down the middle. And that was the first high school. In order for it to be a certified high school, it had to be given to the Board of Education. And that's when we first had a high school. And I can't remember, but I went to the first Banneker High School, and I went in I think it was what we would call first year high school, but I think I might have been in the 7th or 8th grade at that time. But now it would be first year high. And that was our first high school in St. Mary's. And children from all over this county came to Banneker High School, from Charles Hall, all from down Ridge, from all over this county, around 7th District, and had buses to bring them children to that two-room high school. And I can remember I think it was Mrs. Telefarrow or somebody was one of the first teachers, and I can't think of the lady's name. She come from Morgan State, and she was one of our teachers. And it was just a two-room high school, and so many classes in this room, and then you would take certain subjects. Then you'd have a break, and those children would come out in the hall, and the other children would go in that building for the math or something like that. And that was our first high school, those two rooms. And then later on, they built a larger building. But our first high school was built by, and it's a plaque was up in there with the men's pictures and the men that belonged to that organization that built that high school. And it was black men of this county that built that first Banneker High School. And it stayed that way until the Board of Education built a bigger high school. But and then you had that, and then they built a high school at what is called Jarvisville. They had a high school down for the children that way. But now it wasn't, and only when my grandchildren, I did have one daughter that went to Leonardtown High School when that was built. But that was when I had children. That wasn't, when they first built a high school. Oh,
Maxine graduated from that.
I said, but that was in my day, and my children. But my youngest daughter, they did build a Leonardtown High School. But that was a long while after I went to Leonardtown, because when it, in my day, there was no high school. But you always had up at, I can't think. No, up at up at the school where it is now, Margaret Brent. It was a Margaret Brent High School and a Great Mills High School, but we couldn't go to that. It was segregated. We couldn't go to that, and we didn't go to that. That's why they built the Banneker High School.
Okay, hold on a second.
When Steve used to come in.
Okay, let's start fresh with that thought. I got the tape turned over. You're going to tell me about the steamboats?
Oh, that was when I was a child. I mean, very young.
Start by saying, a sentence of...
Well, in my younger days as a young child, when the steamboats used to come to the wharf right there in Leonardtown, and they used to have a floating theater used to come to the wharf in Leonardtown. And it was the floating theater, I think, was run by the Adamses from, I don't know where, Virginia or somewhere. But it was a show, like they had dancing and singing and plays, and and then the other boats that used to come to take the tobacco and stuff to the Baltimore, to the harbor. That was when I was very young, as a small child. And sometimes we couldn't even go down to the wharf unless, somebody older was with you, because, and me personally,
How old that man what was from every year?
I was scary, and I would go on the wall, because it wasn't but planks, wooden, but I would stand way back, because was afraid I would fall off in the water. But people used to throw out money and candy and stuff off the wall, off the steamboat for you. And in the floating theater, when that came, we had a old man and woman. They were I forget their last name, but they always came every year when you heard of floating theaters. And they would come, the Adamses floating theater. And the Adamses would come every year. We had one man, Mr. Joe Gunn, and the lady that went him was, she always went, she taking care of the women's costumes. He was there for the men in the men's costumes, and they went on that floating theater every year up and down the Mississippi River when they used to have showboats. And they would leave here and go and come when the season opened, and then they would come back in the fall on the showboat when the season closed at the end of the year. And they did that for years. That was when the boats used to come in to the Leonardtown Wharf years ago. And I was a small child when they used to do that. And I was very young. And I would have to, you couldn't go by yourself. You would have to go with your older brothers or sisters, because your mom wouldn't let you go there by yourself. And I can't think of the man, he used to have a store. What's the woman, the woman where you say is overseas? I can't think of her name. Her father was Johnson. Yeah. He had a store, right over the water, and wood store, and he sold candy, he sold, all kinds of things right off the wharf, and we could go down and buy penny candy or vegetables, but it wasn't everything canned, because you didn't have nothing to keep fresh meat or nothing like that, but just because it was on the water. And and I can't think of that man's name, Mr. Johnson. One of them had a store over the water and down that way, and the other brother had a store going down the Leonardtown Hill, right where you come around where Dukes is. Wasn't no Dukes, but you come down and go, and his store was over, as you go in towards our one-room school. But they were Johnsons. Mm-hmm. I said some people were Johnsons. Mm-hmm. And I can't think of the man's name, Norm too. Mm-hmm. But that was part of my childhood growing up. And years ago, we had what people call now A&P. We had a A&P store right where the First National Bank is, right on the back side. It was an A&P store. And you could get, had refrigeration, and you could get fresh meat. You could get, vegetables. That was, in them days. And then we had one man, and of course his store, that building still sits there, but it was Mr. Nuttall, Gregor Nuttall's store, and his family lived up over top of the store. And you could go in there, but you couldn't get a lot of fresh meat. Most stuff was canned or vegetables or cookies or cake or stuff like that. But wasn't very much fresh meat you could get out of those, country stores in them days, because you had a whole lot of refrigeration. You didn't have that in them days.
Did they kill hugs and stuff?
Oh, my mother had hugs back, in her day. But and then you had to salt your meat down, stuff like that, to keep it. And we didn't have, because you could raise pigs right in them town in that day. You could do that because, yeah.
No TVs.
Oh, I grew up with lamps, kerosene lamps. That's what I grew up with as a child. That's what you done your homework by. That's was all you had. It was no electricity.
Outhouses.
Yes. All of that was part of my growing up, was my childhood. And very few people had electricity in Leonardtown, very few. And when it was that one bulb with the with a cord that you pulled to turn the light on. And very few people had that. Very few people had that. Most of us had kerosene lamps or things like that. Very few in my day. And huh? Icebox. And Mr. Had that right where the Leonardtown Wharf is now. Used to be a ice house where you go get blocks of ice, and you had people on a horse and wagon, and you put ice on the wagon, and they'd stop by your house, and you'd buy whatever size that could fit your ice box. That's how you kept your food, and that's all you had. It was no electricity wasn't in my childhood. Mm-mm. It was you had the ice box, and sometimes you could have ice water, and sometimes you didn't, because you put that ice in the ice box, and it would, melt down, and you had a bucket underneath the ice box to catch the water as the ice melt. And that was part of my childhood growing up. And you had a wood stove, you cooked on a wood stove, you ironed clothes on the wood stove. Everything was no what you call conveniences. It was just, kerosene lamps, and they did have, some people might have had a kerosene stove, but they thought kind of dangerous, but the others were wood stoves. You burned wood, and you cooked on top of the stove. You had an oven where your bread, and that's what I grew up with. Until I got good at, I guess grown. That's what we grew up with.
Tell me more about the hotel. Who were the customers at the hotel? What was Leonardtown like?
Most of the customers were traveling salesmen that always come, and then sometimes you had people just coming from one town to another, just, I guess, going through. And sometimes some people they had bus service, because we had a bus transportation that would take you from Leonardtown to Washington. And sometimes people would coming from different, like Virginia, get on the wrong bus, and they'd end up down here. And we've had people, seen my mother taking people that, were homeless. She always took in people. And sometimes they would have to stay overnight and try to catch the next bus to put them on the right track so they can get where they were going. And we saw a lot of different people coming and going, because where did they have to stay? At my mother's hotel. It was always, and she never turned nobody out. She always made room for people, strangers, and people used to tell her, "You better watch out who you're taking, you might get hurt," or something like that. But no, she always was a trusting, kind person. And sometimes, people come and go. Some people couldn't pay, some could, but she never let them out, or she never turned her back on them. She always, kept them and helped them to get on the way wherever they were traveling to. Because sometimes they would get on the wrong bus and come in the wrong direction. And then you used to have circuses in that day, and
Gypsies come through.
yeah, well, I have heard of, different gypsies come through in my day. But then every year the circus, like, it wasn't Barn and Bell and Ringling Circus, but it was small companies of circuses. would come, and they'd always pitch over in what is now McGraw Mountain is used to own that farm. But in that day, it was sworn they would let people come in the circus, and you always pitch, their tents over there, and they'd have, circus shows, wild animals, and some of them would have dancing girls and things like that, but, and kids and people all around the town would come and go to see the circus over in the woods. And if it were people that were, had to stay overnight, most of them, some of the circus women would come and stay at my mother's hotel. And, you've seen all kinds of people coming from different parts of the country, but they'd all, if they were black, they all had to end up there because, the hotels and things was a hotel in Leonardtown, but they weren't integrated. If you came, and you probably wouldn't get a room there, you'd have to come, and my mother would, take them in. And of course, they would pay, and sometimes I remember when you could buy a whole dinner for 25 cents. You have, and she was a good cook, and she was, kept everything, had to be immaculate. Everything had to be just so. But nobody left hungry, and if you had money to pay, you paid, and if you didn't, she would not see you go hungry. She would always, see that they had something to eat, and help them to go on, catch their bus so they could get where they wanted to go. And we met, all different kinds of people coming and going from, because it was a small town. And, and the bus service only came in Leonardtown, and was no Lexington Park, and it wasn't any of that. All of that was farmland and stuff like that. And so, and I think the bus, that was the bus service, but the steamboats would leave Leonardtown and go to Miller's Neck, and then from that wharf they would go on out, to further, to different other parts, because it was like down like St. Mary's City and places like that. It was too shallow for steamboats or something like that. But to me, it was it was a joyous childhood for me. I enjoyed my childhood, and I just love St. Mary's. That's all I know, and I love all of it. I loved it all. And I can remember when it's where you have St. Mary's College down here now, down at down St. Mary's City. I can remember that used to be an all-girls boarding school. I can remember that. But we had, nobody here ever went. Nobody black in that day never went. And I can remember when it was a boarding school for kind of wealthy young people that went to St. Mary's College down there. And even out here at Leonard Hall and at St. Mary's Academy, they were religious schools, but they were all white schools in that day. It was not, but now, integration, that changed a lot of things. But in that day, it wasn't. And that was, mostly what I grew up in. But in spite of whatever or however, I loved it. And I still love it. It's just Leonardtown and St. Mary is a great place to be. I love it. I love it. All of the shortcomings, all of the good things, I still love.
Who created the stuffed hand here?
Oh, stuffed hands were created back in slave time, in people that come out of slavery, they had the stuffed hands, and it was women and the men on them plantations were given certain parts of the hug that they could keep for themselves. And they used to take the joe and stuff it. And they made, with the vegetables and the spices, and they stuffed it. And they would tie it and boil it and cook it. And some of the slave masters tasted that and thought, well, it's good, but if we use the good part of the ham, it would be better. And that is how, in St. Mary's County, no, right here in Leonardtown, Mr. Aloysius King, mother, and them people were the first people that started stuffing hams. Slaves stuffed the joe, but stuffing the hams was started right here by Mr. Aloysius King, mother and father, and the black people stuffed them, but they gave them the best part of the ham in order to make it a better tasting piece of meat. And it was started right here in Leonardtown, stuffed ham, right here. And it was good, it still is. But but I mean, I just love my hometown, and I love Leonardtown, and that's all I ever knew, and I love it.
But there were neighbors back in the days.
Yes, indeed. You already know. We had people that always will, and still to this day will, call you out of your name. But my mother always taught us to hold your head up high. You don't have to be what people call you. You know who you are and what you are. Hold your head up high and be what you want to be. You don't have to listen to whatever people say to you. That don't make you that. You rise above that. We will always encourage that you can rise above. I've always rise above. And although I don't say my father had a temper, but my mother didn't. She was a gentle lady. And she always let us know you are better and you can be better, always. And I try to install that in my children and my grandchildren to this day. You don't have to be what people think you are. You don't have to be what they call you. You know who you are, and you can rise above. Always be your best. Always do your best. I was taught that. Although I might not live up to it, but I was taught that. To always be your best and do your best, because you can rise above it. And my mother was the one that believed in rising above. If you can make it 2 steps, go 3. If you can go 3, go 4. If you go 4, go 5. Always rise above. You don't have to be down. And if they put you down, you think highly of yourself. You build yourself up, your feeling. I am worthy. I am somebody. You don't put yourself down. Although you fall, and we all fall short. We always don't hit the mark, but you don't stay there. You can. That's what she always taught us. You can achieve, you can do, and always strive to do, to go the extra mile. Yeah. And she was a woman that believed that. She lived that, and she taught us to do that. Don't care if you fall or if you fail. We all fall and we all fail, but you don't have to stay there. You can do better. Rise above it. And just Leonardtown, I love. I never went nowhere, but I love Leonardtown, and always will, because that's home to me. Leonardtown is home, and I love it.
Can you tell me, did you Did you live and stay at the hotel? Did you live
Oh
somewhere
yeah,
else?
no, I stayed. My mother had her family at that hotel. My sisters and brothers, we lived there. And as each one grew up, some went to Washington to stay, some went to, but I was the one that never went nowhere. I always stayed. And I had a sister across the street. She went to Washington, but she didn't stay. She come back. 'Cause those are my sisters. Harriet Forrest and Elma Butler, Ralph Butler's wife. Those are my two sisters. That's it. Only three of us left. But I never went nowhere. I stayed here. But I love Leonardtown. And I love being a part of Leonardtown. I do. I love it. And we had organizations. We had black organizations and Citizen for Progress. I had a sister-in-law, Evelyn Holland's mother. We all worked in Citizens for Progress. And Citizens for Progress was founded by Dr. Brandywine and Miss Mamie Young and Miss Edna Hall from out of 70. Those women went to Washington, and Dr. Brandywine helped them to form that organization and to the first vistas that we ever heard of come to that organization through Dr. Brandywine to help these people to get their organizations together, do things for each other, start housing projects. Those were built out of Citizens for Progress. And those were those women. Lucille Young, all of those women, Betty Blackson, all of those was in that organization. And that's when that organization started. And those were when the first vistas that ever came through that organization. And it did do good because it started the housing projects, the one over Oaksville, the one down where? Yeah, Norris Road, yeah. All of those were started by that organization. And self-help housing, all of that come about through Citizens for Progress. And we had vistas from Indiana. We had vistas from all over. One of the ex-commissioners, what's his name? Joe Anderson was a vista. He come here as a vista. And Joe Anderson was, and he stayed. He came back. He stayed. He didn't. Mm-hmm. But that organization was the ones that brought the first vistas to help, and it did a lot of good because we had a cookbook printed by them, and the vistas went, all over the county to help people, and encouraging children to go on to colleges and things. It was a good organization, Citizens for Progress was. Helped encourage people to get their own houses. And and Mrs. Holland's mother was a very active member in that. But that's the best I can help you with. But
Okay, you were talking a few minutes ago about the animosity and the prejudice.
Yes.
Can you tell me, was there ever a time that you felt afraid?
I really, and I've heard my mother talk about people being hung, because it was somebody hung, and I think his name was Ben Hanson, and he was hung around Compton, around through that way, because some girl, white girl, was walking through the woods, and she had a heavy bucket, and he helped her to put that bucket up over the fence. And they made a song out of it. And she told the people, he never bothered her, he never molested her, but he was hung for that. And then, but I was small, I don't remember that. I don't remember him being hung, but I've heard my grandmother, because they made a song of it. Nobody but Paul Ben Hanson helped the white girl over the fence, and that he was hung for that. And then the next time that somebody had said about hanging somebody or something, then my grandmother did say that the black men come together, and when they went to the jail to take this man out, they rose up and protected him so that they didn't take it out or even attempt to hang him. But other than that, those are the only two times that, violence really was done here in Leonardtown. But I don't say you have prejudiced people, because that's still to the day, but as a rule.
Carl Bubba falling away.
Huh?
Carl.
Oh yeah, well that was a different kind of tale. He was courting a black woman, and some white man liked her, and he courted her, and somebody killed that white man, and they blamed it on his father, and his father got life in Maryland Penitentiary. He died there, and after he had died, years later, when the white man was on his deathbed, he confessed it to killing this white man, but the other man had already gave his life for that incident. But other than that, that was like the worst thing that, ever happened in my life. Because, people were, I don't know, we just got along fairly good together in that day. But it don't say you weren't called out of your name or whatever. You're going to always find that. But my mother always taught me that you can rise above that. You don't have to be what they say or what they call you. And I tell my children today, grandchildren, just because somebody call you that, you don't have to be that. You can be man or woman enough to rise above it, because you know, and I believe in my heart, I know who I am and what I am. And what you say, that's your problem. It's not mine. I know who I am. And I'm going to rise above. I'm going to always be a better. I'm not going to sink to your level. I'm going to rise above it.
Okay, let me take a short break and okay, Mrs. Young, maybe you can tell me about your immediate family, your children.
Yeah, well, my oldest daughter was Alice, and Alice, my husband was not her father. Alice had my name. She was Alice Swales, and she was the oldest, and she still is the oldest. But she stayed here a while, and then she went to the city to work, to do day's work. And after doing day's work, she got a job in working for Giant Food, and she stayed there for, I guess, 30 years. She retired when what is it, Rojo bought them out. She retired, and but she worked and took care of herself, and she always come back at Christmas time to bring toys and things for her sisters and brothers. And my next oldest son was James, and he worked, around here, and then he went to Washington, and he married and had family and worked, but now he works for the city, and I think they said in 3 more years he'll retire from working for the city. But he had family, and then Frances, my next daughter, Frances Frazier, she went to Cortez Peters for a while typing, and she worked in the city government, and now she works for PG County government, and she's still working. And who was next, Francis?
Maxine?
Maxine. They all went to the city. She lives in Washington now, and she works at the Martin Luther King Library now. But she was in the federal government and come out. They all, got good jobs, and they all work and take care of themselves. They all had, children. Frances only had one. Maxine has two sons. And oldest,
Dave?
David, she graduated from Georgetown University. He got a scholarship that he won to go to Georgetown because he worked over at St. Mary's Academy as after school in the kitchen, and the people there thought a lot of him, and they were interested for him because he loved books and education, and they helped him to get a scholarship to Georgetown, 4 years scholarship. And he graduated from Georgetown, and he worked in Washington. And then my next son was George, and George worked at one time. He stayed there, but when he went to Washington, he worked in government at one time, but I don't think George didn't like it. He didn't care for that type of work. So he worked for Emerson Durr for a while. And then in later years, he went out to Indiana. And from Indiana, he lives in California now. And I hear from him quite often, but he lives out there where the falls were. What is Encino? I think it is out there. Yeah. And I do hear from George. Then I had
Me?
Bertha. Bertha, she went to school, but
I didn't like her.
she didn't finish high school, but she got a job, and she always
Had a
worked.
job.
Yep, she always worked and always took care of herself and bought herself her own trailer down in Lexington Park. And
Now I'm taking care of my mom.
yes, she went to Baltimore and stayed a while, but now she's back here with me. And then I had Marilyn.
Yeah, she in the government.
Yeah, she works for the, what is it? She works for the Naval Investigative Service. And then my youngest daughter, Barbara, and she has 3 children. She had 2 children, and I'm raising them children. Barbara died when she was 31. And I have her children. I had a boy and a girl. That's the girl. And the boy's still in high school. But those were my children. And they all work, and they believe in working. They're hard workers, and they had good jobs. And they had their own homes and things that they do pretty good. And my husband died when Barbara was about 10 years old when my husband died. And and I got his pension, and because I bought this land when my mother died, and I bought this piece of land, and I worked for good people in Leonardtown. I always did days work. But one of my favorite, I won't say favorite, but one of my very helpful people that I worked for was Oliver Wilder. And he was a good person, a kind person, and he always would help you with anything you needed to be helped with. He was a very good person. And he's passed, he's deceased not too long ago. but anything that he could help you with, he would. And I actually loved Mr. Wilder. He was a dear friend. And he was a lawyer, and if you needed him, and which thank God I never did have to go in court, but he would have been there for you. He would. Anything that he could do for you, he would do. He would help you, because he helped me to get the first, I had a mobile home on here, and he helped me to get that through the bank. But, you know, I I just love, I thought of the world of him, and I told him so. And you know what he told me? I said, I thank you for being here for me. And he always told me, I hadn't done no more for you than you did for me. You helped me to raise my children. And I was there with them children. And one of the girls, she used to always tell him, tell her father, you my boyfriend, girlfriend. And so when I started working for her and she got close to me, she said, Daddy, don't get mad. You're not my boyfriend, girlfriend anymore. You're my boyfriend, but Teresa's my girlfriend. But I enjoyed working for him. He was a very good, kind-hearted man, very good. But I've been here all my life, and I just love. And my children, none's perfect, but they had the desire to work and take care of themselves. And they had children, and the children had been encouraged that you have to work and do, and you can do. You always had that thing that you can rise above all situations. And I owe that to my mother, that you can rise above. Don't sit there and stew about what's happening. Do something about it. Rise above that. You don't have to stay down. You can get up, and you can rise above it. And I always love her for that. That you're not what people say. You can rise above it. You can do it. You can make it. It was always the encouraging to go forward, never go back, go forward. Mm-hmm.
Tell me more about Mr. Young. What did he do?
My husband?
Yes.
He was very young, and he lived in Leonardtown. And his mother and father were good people, but he had a hard childhood. Everything wasn't given to him. And he, as a young boy, because there was no school, his father let him go to Washington, and he went to junior high and high school in Washington. Like most children, I guess he got home, he'd come back home. And when he come back home in my young day, I married him. But he was a hard-working person. And in his day, we had a print shop, and he worked for a man by the name of Frank Dye. And he helped him to print all kinds of articles, magazines, and especially, at the closing of school, they had these yearbooks, and he always helped with that. So one year, his boss got sick, and my husband printed those yearbooks for St. Mary's Academy on his own. And he was good at that skill, at that trade. And he was not taught, he only learned from his boss. But he could have, I thought, if he stayed and looked at it now, he could have went to the city and made a good living, printing, because he could do it. And he knew how to do it. But instead, he stayed here, and when World War II, he was drafted. Yeah, I think it was 2 or 3 children, and he was drafted, and he went in, but at the end of the war. I think he stayed maybe 2, or maybe 2 years. And when he come out, then he went to work down at the Navy base. And he worked at transportation down at Navy base. And up until the day he died. And at his death, then what I had to live on was, his annuity. That's what they call it. And I used to always ask him how much is in there, and he always said it's enough. And I sit back now and say, well, no wonder he didn't worry about it. He'd be gone, and I guess it's enough, 'cause it'll be up to you. But thank God, I was able to manage it and to raise my, ones. 'Cause when he died, oldest one was left was my baby girl, and she was 10 years old. But all the rest of them had gone, were grown. But he was a good father, and he loved moving pictures. And it was a theater in Leonardtown, and every day at 6 o'clock when that theater opened, he was there. I used to say, well, how do you sit and look at it over? He would be there. He loved going, that was his hobby, and he loved it. And he went down to that theater every day. And Mr. Candela, who used to be in the First National Bank, was president in his last days. He said he met him, my husband, at that theater, and they become 2 friends. He told my children, he said, that was my first friend when he moved here, and my best friend. My husband and him, Mr. Candela. That's my first friend, he said, and my best friend. But my husband was a hard-working person. But me, people would say things out of the way. But I guarantee you, if you called him out of his name, he didn't use vulgar, but he would let you know in his mouth that I am just as good as you are. It's no different. But I would just say, well, I can rise above. But he might have rose above it, but he was going to let you know, because he was forward. He would let you know what he thought. But he was a good father, and he always wanted the best for his children, and he would encourage them, and he would not let them slack off or whatever. Yes, no, he wouldn't. You all can do it, and you're going to do it. Yes, he would demand that you can and you're going to. He would not let you slack off. He said, because I had it hard growing up. I don't want you to grow up hard. You can do it, and you will do it. Fight for it. He would encourage that way. He would, very much so. He believed in it.
You say that Mr. Young was quick to rebuff slurs.
Oh, yes.
Are there any stories you might remember that where it may have come back to bite him? Or?
No, I can't. No, because his 2 daughters, that's one of them was in the drugstore on the corner, and somebody, very well people in this county, and I'm not gonna call names, but he called them nigger gals. And of course, God knows when them children come and told him, he went right to the place of the source.
And smacked him.
Yes, he did. He did. And don't you ever, ever call my girls out of their name again. Yes, no, he would let you know that you had called him out of his name, because he said.
He smacked him. Wow.
But yes, he did. He wouldn't know. You treat him like he treated you. I'm not gonna do you, and you're not gonna do me. No, he was quick. Wouldn't fight, but he was quick to let you know that I am not that, and I'm not gonna stand and let you do me. If you use words with me, I'm gonna use words with you. If you want to go further, I will go further. No, no. I'm gonna respect you, and I want you are going to respect me, or else you don't have to be around me. No, no, he wouldn't. No, he wouldn't take that. But I might have would have, but he wouldn't. No. He was very forward, very much so.
Okay, tell me, what part did religion play in your life?
Well, that was an important part of mine.
Okay, start by saying religion was an
Yeah, religion was an important part of my life because to me it seemed like that was, I say it come back from Africa because my grandmother in that day, they always sung, calling on Jesus to help me, to bring me through, or you always, and my mother, she used to play on the piano, and she was Christian, a Catholic, and she was raised a Catholic, and she died a Catholic because she believed in that wholeheartedly. And hymns and Sundays, nobody was going to sit in her house and not get up and go out of that door to church. You were going. There wasn't no excuse to it. You were going. As long as you were in her house, you were going to be there on Sunday. You were going to be at that church whenever it was time for you to be there. And I was raised in it and grew up in it. And all my sisters and brothers grew up in it. And whatever they said, she believed that. And with her whole heart. And Lent, with that fish and that seafood, to this day, is some fish, I don't want it. I got told her that. But I didn't say that in her house. I had to eat that or else. But she was very, very, very religious. But my grandmother wasn't. But she was a kind, gentle lady, but she never, nobody ever told her about God or taught her about religion. Even my father, my father was born back in slavery. And he went to church, but he wasn't but my mother was very extra religious, very much so. And she believed in all what they taught her and told her. But I went, as long as my mother lived, I was a Catholic. But then when I got older, there was some things that were taught that I just didn't, I couldn't go along with. And then I had two Catholic priests, Father Schubert and Father Barbo, because we weren't encouraged to read that Bible. We were told, you don't understand it. It's in there. You don't understand it. And it was in Latin. I've sit in church when I was young, and it was all Latin. I don't know what I heard. I don't know what they were saying. But I sit there because I had to, because my mother said you had to be there. But I had two priests that told me, Teresa, pick the Bible up and read it. God has a message for you. And I was 48 years old when I first picked it up and opened it to read. And I've been reading it ever since when I was 48. And by my reading it and asking God to show me, to teach me, because that's in the 25th Psalm, tell me that I know now that some of the things that I was taught are not true. But I didn't know that then. I was taught that. And after my picking it up reading, I come out. I guess I'm the oldest one of my family. But I came out of Catholic religion because it teaches things that are not in the Word of God. It teaches things that come out of the mind of your Pope or whoever, wherever seminary you went. And I didn't realize this till late years. Each seminary, if it's Baptist, it has Baptist doctrine. If it's Catholic, it has Catholic doctrine. Methodist, each one has their doctrine of what their church believes. And I didn't know that till I'm near 80. And some of the things that they believe is not necessarily what God is telling you in there. And to me, that means it's time to back up. That you don't need to be. I don't. I can't speak for nobody, and I don't try to. I'm only speaking for me. I can't sit there and say, yes, I believe when I know I don't. So by reading that, it's a lot of things that I know are not so. And I don't propose to, say that, yes, that's so, because I know it's not. And that's why, I don't go. I read the Bible. I don't go. But my sisters go faithfully every Sunday. And that's okay. They're my sisters and I love them. But if that's what's for you, it's okay, but it's not for me. I can't stand there and tell you, sister, I believe when I don't. If I don't believe that, I'm not going to go with that. But I don't down nobody else's, and I don't encourage nobody. You read it for yourself. Because like them priests told me, God has a message especially for you. And my message might not be your message. So I don't down nobody's, but I choose not to sit under it. I'm not going to say, yes, I'm going to sit under that. Because then I would be a hypocrite. I have to go by what I read in that word and what God's message is to me. And that is something that helps, encourages me to love all people. And I do go to prison fellowship ministry. And I go to the women and I encourage them to let them know just because you're incarcerated, you're not the worst person in the world. We all sin and fall short, and I let them know that. I said, just like you sin, I'm a sinner. God tells me that in His Word. We all sin and fall short. So don't put yourself down. You're created, and I had joined civil rights, black history. I'm in the stage now. I know it's different colors and races. I don't see the color. If God said I'm created in His image and likeness, what color is that? Nobody has seen. So if we're all in His image and likeness, we're all one. And I look at the war pictures of Iraq today, and in spite of all that evil and all that, you only know you're in the image of God. Those are your brothers and sisters in Christ, whether they want to be or not. And that's where I look. I try to live my life, the few days that I have here, that no, we're all one, a human race. No color, sure your color too, but if you're in His image, and if you're in His likeness, that ain't saying nothing about color. You can be white, but you're still in his image and likeness. You can be black, but you're still in his image and likeness. So you're his creation. So act like it. He never choose one over the other. He said we're all one. So that's the way I look at my life at 82.
Okay, do you think there's a difference between black people and white people? And if so, what's that difference?
The only difference I can see is the color of your skin. Other than that, no. You are a human being. We have different attitudes. We have different likenesses. We're all not the same. But if we are created by him in his image and likeness, then we're one. We only have one maker. And we have only one that we're going to answer to. And whether we like it or not, you're my sister, you're my brother. I see you as my brother. I see them over there as my sisters. I can't separate that. That's the way my life has turned out in my latter days, just from reading the Word of God. And if I can help, then I reach out to my sister or my brother. It didn't say what color they were. And we all have different makeups, different attitudes, we all. But in the final analysis, we are all one people, people of God. Don't make no difference whether you're Jew, Greek, whatever. No. To me, that's the way, that's the message that comes to me. And and if other people don't believe that, well, that's their right to do. And I'm not going to be bent out of shape, or I'm not going to get mad, or I'm not going to not speak. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try to do it his way. And when he walked the earth, he didn't choose and pick. And when he died for all. That all might come to the knowledge of him. So that's the way I try to live mine now.
Okay, let's stop there for a second. Do you think people are different today than they were when you were growing up, and if so, how?
Well, I think, yes, people are different today than when I grew up, because when I grew up, it was different times, and different things were important. What was important back then seemed like were minor things, things that you own, things that, on your farm or in your home. But now we live in a world. Our world is surroundings. And yes, people are different. People were raised different. People believe different. But because they were raised different and because they believe different, they are still your sisters and brothers in Christ. And you have to accept them, even though they're different. That's the way I feel about things. I don't say, well, I'm better than you, or you're not as good as I know. We are all different, and we are all raised different. We have different cultures. We have different beliefs. And I'm not going to down your belief in culture. I didn't have to live under that. And I might not understand it, but I'm not going to say it's all wrong. Because that's your culture, and that's your belief. Mine is different maybe from yours. But we're all in this world together. And we are all here together because the world, in my day, was huge. But in this day and time, through modern invention, the world is smaller. We had the same, divisions, but technology and all is bringing us closer together. So we have to, I try to look at news, I try to read, papers and things to stay up on things. I don't know about all these modern things, but this is the time that we live in. And things, more, I say the more to change, the more to stay the same, because it is a change. And people are highly educated, computers. I don't know all about them things, but it's out here and it's here. And, but to me, you accept people as they are, because they are human people. They're not animals, they're not, they're humans. And it's all of different nationalities, but it's still one human race. But different nationalities, different teachings, different beliefs, but we're all one. We're all on this planet together. And so if we try to see it as, difference, but we all here, we all have some need of each other. We might, and we don't always see the need that we have for each other, but we do. We need each other because we are human. We are human beings. And we all have one creator. And so we're here and try to, I might not know your culture, you might not know mine, but my gosh, we are here. And we're all in this world. And we all, it would be better if we all would try to get along. Although you don't believe in, I just think that God puts certain people, certain places at certain times for a reason. And I tell you now, I don't know all the reasons, but he knows. And they're there because that's where he wants them to be at that particular time. And we put up with each other. And to my country, I tell anybody, I love America. This is all I know. I don't know no other. And whatever happens in America, no, we're not perfect. And we make mistakes, but this is my country. And same way with Leonardtown. It's other towns and other places, but this is all I know, and I love this. But if I go out from this, hopefully I will be able to understand, tolerate, and do what I never was raised around. But I can be woman enough or man enough to understand it or to try to tolerate it or to, make it work together for our betterment. Not just for me, but for all them that are around you. That's the way I look at life.
As you look back across your life, what is the one thing that has meant the most to you? Let's start by saying the one thing that's...
Well, the one thing I guess that's meant the most to me was my mom and who she was and how she raised us. And I have to say my mom and dad. But my mom, my dad worked and was head, but I think my mom was kind of the boss, because my mom, this is the way it is, and this is the way, and my dad accepted her opinion, but he was a good provider. He always worked, but he accepted her opinions, her beliefs, and she was kind of a forward person, and we all accepted her, and I just thank God for her. I really do, because I had a loving mom, a very, I say she was a go-getter. It was out there, and she was gonna go and make it work. You can. She was a you can do person. Yeah. She was gonna make it work regardless of if it was difficult, if you come across hard times or things that you can do it, you can overcome. She was a go-getter. Yes, she was. And I just thank God for her. I had a wonderful mom. Mm-hmm. Nothing was going to defeat her. She was going to conquer. I'm gonna do it. She never gave.
Is there a question you'd like to ask?
No.
No?
No, I have a wonderful mom. Beautiful mom.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Young. I appreciate it very much.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.